You step out your front door, tap a few icons on a delivery app, and wait for the world to come to you. Movement for us is a solved problem, a background noise in our daily lives. But for 300,000 years, every mile moved was a calculated gamble with death. 100,000 years ago, traveling that same distance meant a week of walking barefoot over jagged volcanic rock and through tall grass where you were definitely not the top predator. There were no roads, no trail markers, and no map to tell you if the next valley held a fresh spring or a pride of lions. For our ancestors, exploring the world wasn't a grand adventure. It was a brutal, slow-motion race against extinction, where your only vehicle was your own 2 feet, and a desperate hope that there was something better over the next horizon. This is the incredible story of how we mastered the impossible art of movement and conquered every corner of our planet. To understand how we covered 15,000 miles without a single compass, we have to look at the original transportation technology, your feet. Humans are, quite literally, built to never stop. While a cheetah is a masterpiece of speed, it's a biological failure at endurance. It overheats and shuts down in seconds. You, however, are a masterpiece of long-distance engineering. Your feet possess arches that act as high-tension springs, and your Achilles tendon stores and releases energy with every stride so your muscles don't have to carry the full load. You even have a specialized ligament at the back of your neck to keep your head steady while you run, and nearly 2 million sweat glands to keep you cool, while every other mammal on the savanna is forced to stop and pant in the shade. In 1978, we found the ultimate proof of this, the Leyte Toli footprints in Tanzania, pressed into volcanic ash 3.6 million years ago. 2 individuals walking upright side by side, their gait almost identical to yours. We were walkers long before we were thinkers. Starting roughly 70,000 years ago, this endurance allowed us to walk out of Africa, but we didn't just wander aimlessly into the dark. We followed the seafood highway. Instead of fighting through harsh inland deserts, many of our ancestors hugged the coastlines of the Red Sea and the Indian Ocean. This was a brilliant survival strategy. The coast was a reliable, 24-hour buffet of shellfish and seaweed that provided a steady supply of protein and a stable climate. By following the salt and the sand, we effectively circumnavigated continents, moving generation by generation until the world itself decided to help us out. During the Great Ice Ages, the Earth's water was locked up in massive ice sheets, causing sea levels to drop and revealing ghost continents. This revealed the Beringia land bridge connecting Siberia to Alaska and Sundaland in Southeast Asia. These weren't narrow bridges. They were vast, teeming ecosystems where our ancestors followed mammoth herds into a new world, without even realizing they were crossing between continents. They weren't just wandering. They were networking on foot, trading obsidian and shells across mountain ranges they couldn't name. But eventually, we hit a wall that no amount of walking could overcome: the open ocean. For millions of years, deep water was a dead end. Then, around 65,000 years ago, something miraculous happened. Humans reached Australia, a continent that has never been connected to the mainland. To get there, they had to cross at least 60 miles of deep, open sea. You don't drift that far by accident. It required the deliberate invention of the world's first vessels, likely rafts made of bamboo or bundles of reeds tied with leather. The oldest physical boat we've ever found is the Pest canoe from the Netherlands, a 10,000-year-old hollowed-out log, but our maritime genius goes back much further. Consider the Polynesians, who conquered the Pacific, the largest body of water on Earth. They didn't have maps. They had the language of the sea. They could navigate thousands of miles by reading the subtle color of clouds near land, the flight patterns of specific birds, and the rhythm of deep-sea swells against the hull of their double-hulled canoes. They turned the stars into a glowing GPS and the tides into a road map. It is perhaps the greatest wonder of our species that we found tiny specks of land, like Hawaii and Easter Island, using nothing but raw observation and courage. Even as we conquered the waves, we faced a weight problem on land. You can walk 20 miles, but you can't walk 20 miles carrying a 200-pound kill. For most of history, your body was the only cargo ship you had, limited to maybe 50 pounds. So, we started to cheat. First came the travois, 2 long poles dragged behind a person to move 100 pounds at a time. Then, around 15,000 years ago, we partnered with dogs to haul sleds through the Arctic. But the real revolution happened 5,500 years ago on the steppes of Kazakhstan, when we befriended the horse. The horse changed the scale of the world overnight. On foot, you move at 4 miles per hour. On a horse, you hit 30. Suddenly, the world got 8 times smaller. We found the animal that fit every environment: camels for the Sahara, reindeer for the snow, and llamas for the Andes. But here is the strangest twist in our story. We conquered every ocean and tamed the horse long before we ever invented the wheel. The wheel is only about 5,200 years old, and it didn't even start as a vehicle. It was a tool for making pottery. It took an absurdly long time for someone to turn that disc on its side and realize it could move a cart. Once we combined the wheel with the horse and the first paved roads in cities like we finally had a transportation system that could build empires. Our history is a series of impossible problems, solved by grit and a refusal to stay still. For 300,000 years, we walked barefoot across continents we couldn't name to reach places we had never seen, simply because we had to. We solved the problem of distance so completely that we've forgotten it was ever a struggle. Today, we get frustrated if our flight is delayed by 30 minutes or if a streaming service takes too long to buffer. We live in a world where the horizon is something we see through a window at 30,000 feet. But every highway and every ship in the harbor is a direct descendant of that first person who looked at a distant ridge and decided to start walking. They didn't know where they were going, but they went anyway. And that is the most human thing there is. On the bright side, at least you don't have to worry about your engine getting tired and deciding to stop in the middle of a migration. Because 50,000 years ago, if your legs failed, you weren't just stranded, you were the easiest dinner on the savannah. They walked so that we could fly, and the next time you're stuck in traffic, just remember, your great-grandfather would have traded his favorite spear just to have a seat that didn't involve stepping on a thorn. At least today, the only thing trying to eat you is your mortgage.